everyone, my name is Chelsea and welcome back to my channel. For today's video, I have my October haul and wrap up. So it is another month. I was actually hoping to have this video up earlier in the month because I finished my reading like right before Halloween. However, we got colds in our family. It is just a cold, but it is going around, and so that was fun, and so nobody did much of anything around that time. No filming or anything like that, just taking care of sick babies instead. Everybody is on the mend. We are definitely getting past the worst of it, but yeah, we have a haul and a wrap up to do. Probably a little bit bigger on the haul than the wrap up, but we're gonna jump into it. I will have a timestamp down below as well in case you're only interested in the wrap up, but we're gonna start with the haul like we've been doing for the last few months. So the first amount of books here, I actually did a vlog where I went to a used bookstore, mostly to get rid of unhaul books. But then of course I was there in a bookstore, and so I did actually end up buying some books, but I used store credit, so it's basically like they were for free. And the first one I have here is one that I've read before. It is Beneath the Sugar Sky by Shauna Maguire. This is the third book in the Wayward Children series. I own the first two in hardcover, and so I want to slowly collect these because I have read up through this one, and actually you guys voted for me to read the fourth one this month in November, so I will be reading that one as well. But I've given every single one of these books that I've read so far 4.5 or 5 stars. I just absolutely love them. This was a 5-star read for me, I think earlier this year or the end of last year. I really just can't remember, but I wanted the hardcovers on my shelf, and I found a really nice hardcover at my used bookstore, and so yeah, I had to get it. And because I've read it before, it doesn't count for my TBR, which is great. But then the other ones I have not read before. So we have The Monstrumologist by Rick Yancey. I found this in the horror section. I have been wanting to read this for a while. I don't think I actually knew it was horror, but I'm very excited because I found it used, but still in really good condition. And this is just basically about somebody who studies monsters. That's what the Monstrumologist is. I don't know much else about it. I do believe it's going to follow more of a younger character. It says, Will Henry is the orphan apprentice of a doctor with an unusual specialty, monstrumology, the study of monsters. So it's going to be following Will. I don't know much else about it, but, you know, I bought it in October. I haven't read it yet, but I did feel like that was the perfect time of year for it. We'll see if I get to it this year, or it might be an October read next year. Then I also picked up Grimspace by Anne Aguirre. Anne Aguirre is the author of Strangelove, which is actually indie published. She self-published that one that I read a couple years ago, fell in love with, absolutely loved. That's a sci-fi romance, and this is one of her traditionally published book series, which is sci-fi. I don't know how much romance is in it, but I've been very curious about this one because I've read her indie books, and I wanted to read this one. I had not been able to find it at the used bookstore before because I have actually looked every single time I go in there, and sometimes they have book 2 in the series, but this time they had book 1, and I'm very excited for it. This is going to follow a character who can jump through space in some sort of portal leaping or something like that, and I believe there is something that happens where the people that were her passengers or people she was taking somewhere die. Or, yeah, there's a crash and she has no memory of it. So, she survived, other people didn't, and we're gonna start from there. I'm very curious about this one because, like I said, it is one of her traditionally published works, and I've read her indie stuff. Then, of course, I had to get some manga, so I have No Longer Human by Junji Ito. I actually started this one, I don't know if this is my bookmark right here, so I've read this much right here. I started this one on Halloween, thinking that I was gonna get more stuff done because, you know, we were being little sicky peoples here. It didn't quite happen. I have been reading a little bit more while Elliot's been napping. That's when I've been trying to get stuff done, but this one is a huge chunker of a manga, and it's one of the only Junji Ito's I have not read. However, it is also a translated, it's from a novel into a manga by him, but it is somebody else's work. And it actually says the original novel is by Osamu Dazai, so this isn't Junji Ito's original work, but it is definitely his manga style, and so I'm hoping to finish it this month. And then I picked up 2 volumes of Tsubasa by Clamps. We have Tsubasa Volume 2 and Volume 3. I actually read Volume 1 of this and of XXX Holic at the end of last year because they are series that interconnect, and because I saw these two at my store, I had to pick them up because they are used but still in really, really good condition, and I want to continue in this series. They did not have any other volumes of XXX Holic, so I'm just going to be keeping an eye out for this kind of stuff as we go because there is like a reading order to it, and it's mostly like a one-to-one type of thing, not 100%, but enough that like I need to then get some XXX Holic volumes before I can continue with this one. But this is like a fantasy, like portal fantasy type of stuff, like multiple realities, multiverse sort of thing, and that's how it ends up tying into the XXX Holic stuff, which is more paranormal. But yeah, so I found volumes 2 and 3, had to pick them up. Then moving into the Illumicrate book for September? I think it was actually September. The box came in super, super late. I don't know exactly. I do now remember, as I was saying, I don't know exactly what happened. I do remember what happened. They had something go wrong with the labels and the packing slips or something like that for all of their international customers in September. So the UK customers got their stuff like as soon as it got shipped out. Apparently they didn't realize that they had an issue with their company that was packing up stuff and the labels going to them, I believe it was, until they already shipped out the UK stuff, and so we had to wait like an extra like 3 weeks for these things to even be shipped out. So we got these in the middle of October sometime, and so yeah, they have now opened up a US location, I think for like North America type stuff. So we'll see if the shipping times will be a little bit better that way, because I know I had to migrate my account over to their US site. Does not count for like special editions of things that I do order sometimes, but for the monthly boxes, it looks like we're gonna have less shipping cost and hopefully less shipping time. So we'll see how that works. But September's book is The Book Eaters by Sunyi Dean. I'm very excited about this. I did not know much about it before it was going to be in a box, because I do sort of spoil myself for the books that are going to come in the boxes beforehand, because I want to know if it's something that I was planning on pre-ordering or anything like that. I don't remember too much, except for it is going to be dealing with books and book eaters, but I think our main character is a mother, and I've heard some really good comments about that. I'm trying not to read too much into the book yet, because I do actually want to like go in sort of blind and read it. But also this edition is gorgeous. They changed the color scheme a little bit from the UK edition of the book, but we also have like these really, really pretty sprayed edges, stenciled edges. The end papers are this. I love when we have special end papers, but my favorite part of this is actually the naked hardcover, because I believe this is a Rosie Thorne's like artwork. So it is a paper craft that she did, and it got put onto the naked hardcover. Like, it is absolutely gorgeous. I saw this before they did spoilers on their Instagram as well, but they showed like the actual like paper craft of it. It looks very intricate, and I just love that they have this on there. Like, it is a very gorgeous naked hardcover, and of course the book is going to be signed. But yeah, so I definitely want to read this. It also felt like a book that was probably going to be very good for the fall season. I don't know if I'm going to get to it right away or not, just because I'm currently in the middle of like the Clear Your Shit readathon, which has prompts based on a whole lot of things, but it's sort of like you read it in order, and I'm trying to mood read those prompts as much as possible to try and finish them all, so we'll see. I also picked up a copy of Saga Volume 10 by Brian K. Vaughan and Fiona Staples. They restarted Saga again at the beginning of this year, so in January the issues started coming out. They had like a 3-year or something like that hiatus, and I'm so excited that it is back. I have not read this one yet. I've read the first issue because like when it first came out, I was doing a discussion sort of series with some other ladies about Saga, and so we did actually read the first issue, but I am very impatient in the fact that like if I'm reading issues, I want the next one right away, and so I usually try to forget about comic series until volumes come out, because I do feel like a volume that usually has 3 or 4 or 5 issues in it is going to be a better like amount for me than just like a single 20 or 30 something page issue. So yeah, I have not finished or continued this yet, but we are restarting Saga. They have big plans for this series, and I'm very excited, also very nervous because they constantly kill off like favorite characters and things like that. So yeah, but very excited for this one. And then my last thing to haul, because I did not purchase any ebooks, is actually a Kickstarter thing that I funded last year sometime, but it is Beneath an Alien Sky by Sid Kotian. I actually don't know much about this one. I'm a very big sucker for graphic novels and comics and that kind of thing, especially on Kickstarter where they are like indie published. And this one is like a nice hardcover. It's very shiny with gilded silver edges. But yeah, it's sci-fi. I had to pick it up just because of that, basically. I'm dropping stickers and things because, of course, it came from Kickstarter, so we have things in here, bookmarks that go with the book. But, like, these are the end papers. I'm very excited to get into this. I don't, like I said, know much about it, but, like, the art style pulled me in. It is a sci-fi type of series, lots of alien races. Let's see. On an alien planet, a madman releases a deadly monster onto an unsuspecting populace. The creature is the last of its kind, and it comes from the third planet orbiting a yellow sun. That sounds human to me. I'm very curious about this one, and the one thing about Kickstarter is it does take a while to get to you, obviously, but that means technically I added it onto my TBR like last year, so yeah, we're good, even though I did haul quite a few things this month. So before we go into the wrap-up, I did want to mention like how many things we hauled, that kind of stuff. So at the end of last month, I was at 647 for TBR books, both physical and ebook. I didn't read a ton this month because I was focusing on arcs for Arctober, and I actually do have my arcs on a separate shelf than my TBR because I don't classify them in the same way. So I only read 3 books this month that counted for books coming off of my TBR, and I added 8 new ones. So I'm currently at 652. So we did go up a little bit from last time. Not horribly, and I'm hoping because I am doing the Clear Your Shit readathon this month, and technically next month as well because it goes through November and December, hopefully those numbers will go down because the whole point of the Clear Your Shit readathon is taking books off of your TBR, both physical and ebook. So I am only going to be reading TBR books for those prompts and hopefully, if I can cross my fingers, there we go, finishing them. So yeah, 652, lower than where I started this year, which is the main goal. Now we're going to move into the wrap up. Like I mentioned, I was focusing on arcs, so that's going to change my number a little bit. I mentioned before that I only had 3 books come off of my TBR in the month of October. However, I did read 7 things, so not as bad as only 3, but that means the things that came off my TBR weren't exactly arcs, and I read some things that weren't arcs, but also weren't on my TBR either. We're gonna get into it. I read 7 books for a total of 1,847 pages. 2 of those books were physical and 5 of them were ebooks. 4 of them were novels, 2 were manga, and 1 was a comic or graphic novel. 3 of them were horror, 2 were paranormal, 1 was a mystery, and 1 was a thriller. You can tell I was in October and in that kind of mood. 1 was an indie book and 6 were traditionally published. 2 were young adult and 5 were adult titles. 2 of them were arcs. 2 of them were from Kindle Unlimited or Comixology. 2 of them were books that I bought this year, and 1 of them was a book that I had owned previous to this year. Technically that one was also an arc, but I also had bought a copy, so I put it in I owned the book already. And then for star ratings, I had 1 3-star, 1 3.5 star, 2 4 stars, and 3 5-star reads. So those are all the stats. We are now going to actually jump into the books, starting from my lowest rated, which was still a pretty decent 3-star, going up to my favorite book of the month. So my 3-star read was Tastes Like Candy by Ivy Tholen. This one I think popped up on Kindle Unlimited somehow. I don't know exactly where I found it, but I did pick it up on Kindle Unlimited to read it, and I read it like the day before Halloween because it was a very quick YA thriller, basically, sort of like a slasher novel, and I gave it 3 stars. I do think this is one of those ones that if you're just looking for something that's pretty gory and very much just like a killer slasher type of thing, it's only a couple hundred pages. It was very quick to get through, but I was wanting a little bit more from it. The killing doesn't happen too early in the book, but it does start pretty darn quickly once we get our main characters to the like carnival that they're going to be going into. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. However, I think my biggest issue with this is some of the deaths and dismemberment and bloody gory stuff seemed a little far-fetched. Like, I almost wish it would have been a little bit more grounded in reality. It seemed very over the top. And I don't know if it would have played out better as like a movie or something. Like, sometimes you see those kind of slasher things and you're like, ooh, does that really happen? And I don't know if it was because I was reading it versus watching it, if it would have made a difference. But also, I thought it was very obvious who our killer was, and the reveal for it wasn't anything too crazy. My biggest issue with the person who was the killer was the motivation. The motivation seemed very random and did not feel fully realized. And because of that, the ending of the book where they're trying to have their like villainous monologue and all this kind of stuff just sort of fell flat for me because it didn't seem right. I don't know. It was one of those things where I was mostly on board with this book. It was cheesy, that kind of thing. But the actual explanation for who did it and why they did it just really did not work for me. So this is a 3-star. It's not bad. It's definitely campy, fun, corny. I say fun. It's definitely a slasher type of book. But that's what I was sort of looking for around Halloween, so that's why I ended up picking it up. It just wasn't like the best executed. This author does have one other book that looks like it's possibly the same sort of YA thriller sort of thing. I think I might try that one out eventually, just because I am curious, because I think the one that I read, the Tastes Like Candy, I think is her first one, and these are indie published. So it was fun, just not amazing. My 3.5 star was Lute by Jennifer Thorne. This was an arc that I read, and I was so mixed on my feelings for this book. It's supposed to be like The Wicker Man meets Final Destination, and I really like the parts that were like the Final Destination. People are doomed to die. It's gonna happen in weird, random sort of ways. But the other part of it was our main character talking about her time on Lute. She is somebody who came from somewhere else. She wasn't born on this island. She doesn't fully believe that the day is going to happen where 7 people are doomed to die by the end of the day, and then along with that is like island prosperity sort of thing. And so she talks a lot. It's a lot of stuff in her head. She rambles on a little bit too much. It did sort of help the atmosphere for it, but some of the times she would talk about stuff in her head when I feel like it should have been a little bit more like pick up the pace because dramatic things, deadly things are going to be happening, but she would take her time with stuff. And so that was a little bit, it took me out of it. Also, this book is set in the future where there is a World War III. It did not have anything to do with this book whatsoever at all, and so I kept hoping for more of like why this book was set when it was set, and with a World War III going on in the background, we had no explanation for why the war started, but they just kept mentioning it every so often, and like going into it with the way that she started talking about stuff, it felt like it was going to maybe be a historical book, and then I thought it was present day because they talk about like cell phones and stuff, and then it ended up being potentially set in the future during World War III. I just did not understand that part of it, but I would read more from this author in the future, and like I said, I really actually did like the horror elements of it, the scary, deathly, Final Destination type elements of it. The other parts just fell a little bit flat, and I will say because I read this book, I actually did marathon all 5 Final Destination films. And I thought I had seen the first 3 before, but I'm pretty sure I actually saw 4 as well. So 5 was the newest one for me. But those are also just good October-y, Halloween-y fun. Moving into my 4-star reads, the first one I have here is The Liminal Zone by Junji Ito. This is a collection of short stories, or maybe more like novella-length stories from him. There are 4 in this collection, and I really did like this one. I think the first and last stories were actually my favorite of this collection. The first one was Weeping Woman Way, and the last one was Slumber, although the 2 in the middle were also quite good. And one thing I think did it, and there is an afterword in here by Junji Ito saying that this was something that he ended up doing for an online publication during 2020-2021. And so because it was online, he didn't have to conform to page counts. So like if you're getting published with a manga in a magazine, you usually have like a certain number of pages to tell a whole short story if that's what you're going to be doing. And so for some of his concepts, some of his short stories in the past, he has to make sure that whatever he's trying to tell is in that short of a number of pages. Whereas here, because it was online, they could just extend it to however he saw fit. And so I think that was one of the things that I really liked about this collection, is that there were some stories that were quite long. Like I think the first one especially goes from page 3 to page like 66. They felt more complete. Some short stories from Junji Ito, I do actually feel like I need more of an explanation for things. Like it doesn't feel quite wrapped up enough, and I didn't feel that way with this collection. So that was something I really appreciated, and it totally makes sense that if you're going to be writing for, I guess, an online platform, you're able to do that a little bit better. And so I felt like these really fit the bill, and I think this is one of his newest publicated works, because like I said, he was writing them around like 2020, 2021. So yeah, full 4 stars for this one. And then my other 4 stars was another arc. It was The Dead in the Dark by Courtney Gold. So this is one that is another YA book, very paranormal, sort of mystery related, and I really did like this one as well. I think I would have given it a higher rating, except for the ending brought it down for me. Basically, this follows a girl whose fathers are like part of a ghost hunting TV show, and on a break from this ghost hunting TV show, they move back to like the town where both of her fathers are from, and there's like a kid from the local high school missing. I think he was a senior, so I don't remember if they had like graduated already or if he was still in high school, but he's missing, and people think that maybe one of her fathers has something to do with it because that's around the time that he came back to town, and she's trying to figure out exactly what's going on. She befriends one of the girls there. The girl can potentially see ghosts and is trying to figure out what happened, because this was her ex-boyfriend, and it was a very, very paranormal, good time, good mystery, until the end. There was a part near the end where it was like the climax of the story, and it just felt way too rushed. Like, I don't want to say what the ending was, but it almost felt like one of those sort of like, we solved everything with the power of love. Like, it was just not explained enough. No high stakes. Like, I was really hoping, because there were some high stakes throughout, because people are getting killed by some mysterious creature or something in this town, that we were going to actually have some higher stakes, and we didn't. So I was a little bit disappointed in that. So I still really enjoyed it, but it couldn't get a full 5 stars because I was disappointed in the ending. But again, it was a great book to read around this, you know, autumn spooky time of the year. Then we're gonna move into my 5-star reads, which I do have 3 of them. The first one is Chew, Volume 1, Taster's Choice by John Layman. This is a comic series that I have been seeing mentioned before on Ashley from Bookish Realms channel. Like, she has actually recommended it, I think, on her channel a couple times. I think mentioned it potentially to me once, or it's just something that I've picked up on multiple times from her. And the first 5 volumes are currently on Comixology, which I do pay with my Kindle Unlimited subscription. And so I was doing Arctober, reading arcs in the month of October, but I was sort of interspersing it with manga and comics in between. Like, I would read an arc, a book, and then move to a comic or a graphic novel. And this is one that I thought would also fit really well for October, because basically it follows our main character of Detective Chu, C-H-U, but he has this like ability to see where his food is from, like meat, but also some vegetables and stuff. Like they say, I think the only thing that doesn't give him this like ability is beets, which is just like so weird. But he ends up accidentally ingesting like blood or something in his meal, like human blood, because like the chef cut his finger, and realizing that this guy is like a serial killer. And so that starts his journey of joining, I think, the FDA, but like this is like a weird futuristic dystopian a little bit sort of America where chicken is banned because it's like after an avian flu epidemic. So like you cannot buy or eat chicken. So yeah, it's very interesting, very sort of weird, a little bit cannibalistic in the fact that like in order to solve some of these mysteries and things, he has to sort of like taste human flesh and that kind of thing. But I really enjoyed it. Like it is so out there, so weird, but again, perfect type of read for the October spooky season. And I'm so glad that Ashley had recommended this, because now I definitely need to read more. And I'm pretty sure, like I said, the first 5 issues were on Comixology, but my library Hoopla app, so it's based on like what library card you have, like not everybody's gonna have everything, but my library app actually has all the volumes. So I will eventually be marathoning this as well, I'm pretty sure, because I'm very intrigued with this concept and where the story is going. My next 5-star read was Can't Stop Cursing You Volume 2 by Kensuke Koba. So this is a sequel, obviously, because it's Volume 2. I really enjoyed this one. I picked this volume up in September, ended up reading it in October, getting on top of some of my TBR books, and I love this one almost as much as the first one. I gave both of these volumes 5 stars because it is very much a like paranormal sort of story. Like there are curse gods, and people are dying, and this one specifically is related to somebody who is like claiming like, hey, I made a pact with a curse god and I have like 7 people or whatever who are going to be cursed, and if you can figure out my riddles and stuff, they won't die. There's like this whole thing. So there's like this game aspect to it as well. It is very dark, very bloody and gory, and I really enjoyed this series. This is the series that I believe I heard Shay from Shay Geeks Out talk about last year sometime, mentioning the fact that this main character feels very reminiscent of like Elle from Death Note, but in a more prominent role as a curse breaker, and I do definitely see it a little bit. I just absolutely love this series as well. So these are actually both people that are hosting the 30 and 30 manga challenge, which is actually going on this month in November. They're joined with Isabel from Happy for Now and Bree from Locked Petition. I will leave them all linked down below because they have amazing recs for manga, comics, and graphic novels. And so yes, I absolutely love this one as well. And then finally, the last book that I read this month, and my favorite book of the month, is Under the Whispering Door by TJ Klune. I knew I was going to love this because so far everything that I have read by TJ Klune I've loved, but also so many people love this book. I also do have the Pretty Edition. This is the one that I had actually already owned a copy of, but it also was technically an ARC because I had an ARC of it that I just didn't get to, but I bought the book too. I'm a little like mad at myself that I didn't read it earlier because I did absolutely love this. 5 out of 5 stars, favorite book of the month. And it's very interesting because my husband picked this one out for me in my TBR video for going into October, because I wanted spooky books in general, and so he just saw this, and based on the cover and the title and stuff, he thought this one was going to be spooky, and I knew going into it probably wasn't like spooky, because it does start basically after our main character has died, and he is now going to this tea shop and having to deal with the fact that he is dead and all this kind of stuff. But one thing I did not expect, because I don't think many people have talked about it, our main character at the beginning of this book is an asshole. He is the worst human being ever. He's like the epitome of like, I want to say old white guy. He's not actually very old, but he just, that's how he feels. He feels like those really old, privileged, entitled white guys. and he grows so much as a character throughout the book that like I loved that character growth. Because this is a book full of character growth, we don't have as much action in certain parts. There are a lot of pages and chapters and scenes where it's mostly just like people talking, him to other people, that kind of stuff. It is very much a like novel about characters and character growth and like relationships between people. There are some parts that are a little bit more dramatic and have more action in them, but it's not the main focus. And it's not necessarily a slow moving book. It's just that some of the parts definitely make you take your time, because these are good conversations. It's very much like what happens after you die and like how were you as a human in your life and that kind of stuff. Like I really loved the dialogue and like the concept that they had in here, but it can feel like it's slowed down a little bit, like, but like I said, it doesn't feel like a slow read. It just feels very calm in certain places. But yeah, my favorite part I think was the fact that like all I had heard about when I started this book was that people love this book, and I started reading it, and like literally from page 1 I'm like, this guy is an asshole, like what are we doing here? How is this book going to continue? TJ Klune blew it out of the park. Like I absolutely loved it. I love the fact that it was so character driven and so character like transformative. It was so good. I also do have House in the Cerulean Sea on my TBR for this month. So I'm excited to get to that one because I have not read that one either. And so far, like I said, I have not read a TJ Klune that I have not loved. So yeah. And then that is actually going to be it for this month. That's the haul. That's the wrap up. Oh, I did want to mention actually before I forget, because I will forget, October was Arctober. So my goal was to increase my percentage on NetGalley. Now, I did actually start out the month at 77%, which is amazing because they want you to be around 80, and I know a lot of people are much, much lower because sometimes you just keep getting accepted for ARCs, and yes, probably you should stop requesting them, but try telling myself that, like, it doesn't happen. So I actually did read 3 ARCs, wrote reviews, posted them on NetGalley, but I also was accepted for 3 more, but surprisingly, I did go up from a 77% to a 78%. So I did actually complete exactly what I wanted to. But yeah, I was approved for 3 more ARCs. So my numbers didn't change very much at all. And that'll be it for today. If you liked this video, give it a thumbs up to let me know. Subscribe to this channel if you'd like to see more videos. I do currently have videos up on Thursdays, so I will see you then. Bye.